Good evening. I'm Jean Ennerson.
And I'm Barry Judge. Welcome to Our Times.
From King 5, these are the stories of our times. Tonight, Our Times brings you a shocking look at how the state spends your tax dollars.
Yikes. God.
It sure jolted this veteran state senator. One agency wants $1 million daycare center for its new headquarters. And did you know you paid for this agency's new marble floors and $44,000 fish tanks?
I wouldn't expect many law firms to even have space quite that nice.
How about $2 million of your dollars for a new puppet theater down in Vancouver?
Now, if you ask people if they would rather have the cost of a new elementary school paid for or a puppet theater, I think I'd know probably what the public would choose.
From excessive spending on new buildings to paying inflated prices on paperclips, Our Times has proof tonight that even in these tough times, state agencies have been on a spending spree. The spending doesn't stop in Olympia. Your money is being spread around in sunny Hawaii and San Francisco and London. State education officials continue to rack up frequent flyer miles.
$206,000 in 2 years for trips to New Orleans, San Francisco, Reno, Boston, Phoenix, Victoria, Sun Valley, Aspen, Hawaii.
Our Times has information on hundreds of taxpayer-funded trips, much to the horror of our new governor.
That's outlandish. We're going to get to the bottom of this.
How can we be told to tighten our belts while our tax dollars take off with jet-setting bureaucrats? Also tonight, do you know the struggle? For kids in places like inner-city Seattle, the struggle is getting past gangs and drugs before it's too late.
A gang will take anybody. You know, the honor roll won't, the basketball team won't.
My dad used to sell drugs, and then my dad started using, and downhill you go, you know.
Nowadays, you settle it with a gun.
Tonight, the stories of 3 Seattle youngsters trying to avoid bad influences on the streets and make it in the world. What does it take to win the struggle? These stories and more tonight on Our Times.
No matter how you look at it, the cost of living in Washington State is going up. Our lawmakers in Olympia have just spent the past 2 months trying to come up with $600 million in new taxes.
There's also been a lot of talk about cutting the fat out of state operations. But just how much wasteful spending has been going on? Tonight, you're going to see as we bring you the results of this Our Times investigation.
There is still waste in this government that has not been cut, and that waste needs to be cut, and we're not going to let them get by without cutting the waste in this budget.
Angry taxpayers protesting on the steps of the state capitol want legislators to know they're fed up.
They spend, they don't worry about where the money comes from. They're not accountable. If anybody ran a business like that, they go bankrupt.
There is massive waste in state government. An Our Times investigation has found millions of tax dollars misspent on everything from office supplies to buildings. A prime example, the new Department of Natural Resources building. A $73 million office complex constructed on the Capitol campus in Olympia. Taxpayers footed the bill for expensive upgrades. Marble floors, facades, and staircases. A towering windowed rotunda with decorative wood trim. Mirrored elevators, and 2 huge fish tanks that greet visitors. The price tag on the fish tanks? $44,000, not including maintenance. Commercial realtor Deborah Ballard was shocked to find such extravagance in a public building.
I wouldn't expect many law firms to even have space quite that nice.
Who approved those extras?
Longtime friend and associate.
The legislature did, without even knowing it. Lawmakers simply voted for a total amount on building projects without ever seeing an itemized list of costs and materials.
Look at how
State Senator Ann Anderson.
If you would have had a line item of $44,000 for a fish tank, it would have never passed through here. But in the whole scope of a pot of money for a building that seemed appropriate for a new natural resources building, Nobody can find those costs up front.
The state pays far more to build office space than the private sector. Take a company like Egghead Software. It leases this attractive and highly efficient office building in Issaquah for its corporate headquarters. The construction cost, $12 million, about $80 a square foot. Compare that to the new $73 million DNR building at $217 a square foot. In this case, the state paid nearly 3 times the cost of a typical office building. Even Governor Lowry didn't realize how much the state has been paying for buildings.
I just find that unacceptable, that we in state government must do a much better job of that. We need to establish an ethic of working for the most efficient return on the taxpayer's dollar. I would say in that example, that ethic just was not there to any satisfactory level.
Concern for taxpayer dollars may have been missing during the construction of another state office complex near Olympia. The Department of Labor and Industries recently threw a party to thank legislators for their new headquarters. A $63 million building that includes a health club for state workers. It's run by the YMCA, but $135,000 in tax money helped build it.
Labor and Industries.
Labor and Industries also requested a $1 million daycare center for the use of labor and industry employees. Such extras have angered some lawmakers who are forced to tell the public it must sacrifice during tough times. State Senator Dan McDonald.
You can't be working in spaces that are just quantums, leaps ahead of what the average working stiff out there gets to work in.
The Labor and Industries building also includes a magnificent rotunda that could have been used for work areas. According to state plant mechanic Bill Cahill, the rotunda is another example of inefficiency.
There's got to be in the thousands of square feet of rotunda space there, which has to be heated and lighting, so that, they're wasting electricity, and the heat efficiency it's just a total waste.
State officials have even wasted money trying to save money. They spent $120,000 on new energy-efficient windows in this Capitol campus building. The only problem, the building is scheduled to be torn down in 2 years. Sometimes it seems no one here in Olympia is accountable for wasteful spending. There is an Office of Financial Management, which costs the taxpayers $34 million a year, but it isn't always efficient at identifying waste. Just look what state agencies must pay for office supplies. From this warehouse in Olympia, the state runs central stores. It is set up to purchase office supplies for 135 agencies across the state. Bureaucrats even order some personal items like briefcases and charge them to taxpayers. The idea of the central stores is to use the purchasing power of 88,000 employees to buy supplies at near wholesale prices. But that isn't always the case. Frequently, the state wastes tax dollars, paying twice the retail price. We went shopping at Bismarck for 9 of the items sold in the state store. We found Bismarck far cheaper on almost every product. At Bismarck, we paid $2.69 for a package of legal pads. The state charges $6.95. 10 boxes of jumbo paperclips, $1.99 at Bismarck, $3.37 at the state store. On item after item, the retail price was less expensive than the state.
Everything you see here is kind of work-related, everything that you need to do the job. And
Alan Momahara, the deputy director of the Department of General Administration, oversees the central stores. In 1990, he was named a governor's distinguished management leader. He was not aware the state pays more than retail. Your price is?
$6.95.
$6.95. Includes sales tax and delivery charge. Ours, $2.69. That's an amazing difference.
It is.
difficult to explain the difference away simply by sales tax and delivery.
Can't be explained by that. Obviously, we're getting a higher price than Bismarck is getting.
The price of state supplies includes the $4.5 million cost of running a warehouse. Millions are wasted because managers have failed to shop around for the lowest prices.
We don't do a comparison with what, say, Bismarck is getting or Costco.
You think you should?
It looks like it might be a good idea based on some of the information that you have.
You want to know what your taxes are being raised for? $100 million in new furniture.
Tax protesters weren't happy to find out how much the state spends on furniture.
Well, I'm upset that they're going to buy new furniture in a year when they're supposed to be cutting back. When I don't have enough money, I don't buy new furniture, so why should they?
Last biennium, the state spent $447 million on furniture and equipment, some of it unneeded. During good times, some state directors told employees to buy more equipment rather than return surplus funds to the state.
We've bought welders, we've bought bearing presses, we've bought drill presses, we've bought, in the past we used to buy vehicles.
You think you needed them?
No, they just wanted to spend money, so that's the way to get rid of it.
After buying new furniture and equipment, state agencies send surplus goods to this Auburn warehouse. Nearly new computers and office furniture in good shape are resold, first to other state agencies, then to the general public.
1623 out of 20.
Chainsaws, radios, even tires sell for a fraction of their original cost. The condition of the merchandise varies. Some items may not even be working. But there are plenty of bargains to be found, bargains subsidized by the taxpayers.
He's getting his printer for $50. He sells about $500 for his printer. I am.
Some lawmakers are outraged that state agencies are constantly upgrading furniture and equipment.
Why do state agencies need to get new desks every 2 or 3 years? If we make decisions right now and say, nope, for the next budget 2 years, we're just not going to do any of those upgrades, that savings is $93 million.
When times get tough, I think we can do with what we have for a couple of years.
Lawmakers talk tough, but haven't set much of an example when it comes to furnishings. When the carpeting was replaced, they bought the best money could buy. The price? $47 a square yard. At 7,000 yards, they spent more than $330,000. Instead of buying from a Washington state company, they ordered it from England.
So ordered.
State officials could have gone to a company like the Carpet Exchange in Seattle for industrial brand carpet. Owner Gary Schwartz says, even with a custom-ordered print, taxpayers could have saved nearly $100,000 on carpeting.
This carpet here is around $26. It's manufactured by Milliken Carpet Mills. It's made out of DuPont Extra Life yarn. It's a high-performance carpet. It's made in this country, and it'll do the job.
Information on wasteful spending is hidden. It's rarely itemized in the thousands of pages of budget reports. Finding waste is a full-time job.
Hi, I'm Bob Williams.
Bob Williams directs the Evergreen Foundation, an organization which uncovers government waste. Going from state office to state office, he finds it nearly impossible to track information on spending.
It's very unfair to the public. I mean, it's very difficult for the public to find out where their tax dollars are going right now. It's very difficult. And to find out, are we getting our money's worth?
Political analysts say that voters facing higher taxes are going to make spending an ongoing issue.
All of a sudden, they're waking up and say, where in the hell have you been spending my tax dollars? And so I think there is a difference in voter attitudes of the last 20 years and what we're going to see in the next 20 years.
Get rid of the waste, get rid of the nepotism, get rid of the corruption, and then come back for taxes, but don't come back for taxes until you get rid of that waste in government.
One note on the state's Central Stores warehouse. Lawmakers are trying to cut the warehouse budget by more than 10% in an effort to force staffers to get better deals on the supplies they purchase. Well, hang on to your wallet. The state's spending spree gets worse. When Our Times continues, see how state workers spend millions of taxpayer dollars traveling all over the world. Is the governor doing enough to stop it?
He put this memo out, but it has no teeth in it. They're ignoring it.
Wouldn't it be great to take off on a nice trip to a faraway destination like China, England, or Hawaii? It would be even better if that trip didn't cost you your savings account in the process. Well, there are ways to travel without breaking your budget. You could win the lottery or, as some critics say, just get a job within a state agency and let the taxpayers pay. San Francisco, Hawaii, London, Australia, some of the most desirable vacation spots in the world. They are also frequent destinations for business trips taken by state employees. In the last 2 years, state employees have spent nearly $44 million in tax money traveling around the country and around the world, attending conferences, seminars, and association meetings. The Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction ran up out-of-state travel bills totaling $206,000.
We're going to ask ourselves.
At the same time, some Seattle schools don't have enough books for students to take home. And teachers pay for other supplies out of their own pockets.
You will have high needs.
We asked Superintendent Judith Billings why so much time was spent out of state. $206,000 in 2 years for trips to New Orleans, San Francisco, Reno, Boston, Phoenix, Victoria, Sun Valley, Aspen, Hawaii, Miami, Orlando, Anaheim, Monterey, San Diego, Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Palm Springs, Coeur d'Alene, Nashville, Tucson, China, London, Russia.
If you really want to look at this in depth and not just reel off a list of things like that, what you need to look at is what the conference is, what was the information being shared.
We looked at several conferences Judith Billings attended, including this one, to Russia, to help advise Moscow educators on how to run a school system.
They are way behind us in terms of technology, in terms of up-to-date information, books, materials, techniques. They are literally crying for that kind of assistance from us.
But don't we have children in the same boat as close as the city of Seattle?
I don't have any problem defending that travel because I think that, as I said before, the worst thing we could do is sit here isolated in the state of Washington and pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist.
State Senator Ann Anderson says aiding Russia should not be a priority for state officials.
But in terms of education, I think there's enough to do right here in our own state that we need to work on interesting and new and unique concepts for upgrading education in our own state without going to try to help other people right now.
773 heavy, turn right heading 360. There's traffic at 12 o'clock.
Higher education accounts for 70% of all out-of-state travel. Half of that travel bill is from the University of Washington. Nearly $204,000 for 499 trips during one 6-month period in 1990. These are examples from state expense accounts. English professor Colleen McElroy traveled to San Francisco to attend the opening of a play. Heather McHugh, an English professor, flew to Michigan for a poetry reading. Art history professor Constantine Christophides traveled to New York to attend a photo exhibit. Norman Lundeen, art professor, also visited New York for an art gallery opening. 3 of the professors are on leave.
We are here to educate artists.
Lundeen and other art school faculty are eligible for an annual travel allowance.
It does directly benefit me as a professional artist, sure. It's an extremely important part of being a professional in today's world, that you have access to other worlds.
At a time when students are facing large tuition hikes, university officials defend the cost of travel. Provost Laurel Wilkening.
To most of our faculty, the ability to go to a meeting, once a year or to be able to do their study is not really a perk for them. It's a matter of life and death in their professional work.
Our Times reviewed more than 1,000 expense reports from state agencies. Just as surprising as the amount of travel is the large number of employees who attended the same conferences. According to these 1989 expense reports, the Human Rights Commission sent 10 people, including a typist, to a conference in Las Vegas. The Superintendent of Public Instruction Office sent 5 people to a conference in Orlando.
Would sending 5 people to one conference be out of the ordinary?
I think so, according to what our policies have been.
Well, records show that 5 people were sent to a conference in Orlando at the cost of $5,000.
I have to tell you that I don't approve out-of-state travel. My deputy does.
In 1990, the state print shop sent 8 people to an equipment show in Chicago and 6 people to a similar show in New York. We asked Lee Blankenship, the director of the state print shop, why he sent so many people. He refused an interview but told us by phone, quote, "I was appointed by Governor Gardner. Governor Lowry hasn't decided what he's going to do with me. I don't think it would be in my best interest right now to comment on camera."
I appreciate that.
We asked the governor what he thought about sending so many people on one trip.
That's outlandish. We're going to get to the bottom of this, and we are going to absolutely minimize travel to those things that are necessary for the proper function of the state.
Many conferences are held in vacation spots. In 1989, Diane Dolstad was one of 2 Department of Agriculture employees who attended a weed conference in Honolulu. She told us it was the only way to obtain information on Hawaii's weed eradication program.
To the best of my knowledge, nothing has been published, per se, on the Department of Hawaii's program.
But there is plenty of published material on Hawaii's weed program. We obtained this 300-page transcript of the weed conference Dolstad attended from the state library, only a few blocks from her office, at no cost. The cost of sending 2 weed specialists to Hawaii, $1,978. Senator Dan McDonald says state workers need to realize that scarce tax money pays their travel bills.
Somebody's got to grab them back by the scruff of the neck and say, this is real money, and this is what we're giving up for that, and it's a heck of a lot more important than a weed conference in Hawaii.
High 762 heavy, climb and maintain 15,000.
Another major reason for state travel is association meetings. State lottery officials take frequent trips to association meetings around the country and around the world. Evelyn Jensen, the director of the state lottery, is also the president of the National Lottery Association. She travels extensively, including a 1989 trip to Melbourne, Australia.
It was 5 years ago. I think that the context today, it's certainly, I wouldn't travel to Melbourne, Australia today.
At the state library, officials traveling to Library Association conferences ran up a $43,000 travel bill. Nancy Zussi, state librarian, was elected president of the National Association of Librarians. She's taken 22 trips to 11 cities in 2.5 years.
And the travel, say my own travel, is perhaps $10,000 a year.
Many, including the governor, feel strongly association travel should be cut.
If I was a dictator, what I'd eliminate would be national associations. I mean it.
Although state trips add up to millions of frequent flyer miles, but the free travel earned is rarely applied to state business. As a trade representative promoting Washington products, Art Schuneman, the government's most frequent flyer, spent $53,000 on trips around the world.
The miles accumulate to me, and the frequent flyer tickets that the airlines issues, or the miles or the ability for you to use those tickets accumulates to me.
The governor has requested state officials scale back travel, sending a memo to all agency directors. But Bob Williams of the Evergreen Foundation says the memo hasn't helped reduce travel.
The only way it would mean something is if the governor put out an executive order, and that's legally binding. So agencies are kind of laughing.
State officials are still booking trips. Our Times obtained signed authorizations for upcoming trips planned by several agencies, including
the Lottery Commission, the Superintendent of Public Instruction, the Department of Labor and Industries, the Utilities and Transportation Commission, the Department of Ecology, and the Department of Agriculture. In a one-month period, those 6 government agencies alone planned 95 trips to locations all over the country. We turned that information over to Governor Lowry. We're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars. So in light of that, I ask again, do you feel that your memo asking State Department heads to restrict travel is being respected? Or do you need to issue an executive order, a directive?
I need to issue an order. I need to get stronger and stronger on this until it is absolutely followed. And we need travel to be restricted to those things that are absolutely necessary for the functions of the state. And I will issue such an executive order, and we'll get stronger and stronger on that until we get this done the way I want it done.
So, Barry, just how quickly will the governor take action?
Gene, as a result of the Our Times investigation, the governor has staffers drafting an executive order right now, and state lawmakers are joining in as well. They want across-the-board cuts in all out-of-state travel.
And our investigation doesn't end there. How do you think your salary stacks up against the average state workers?
If you put employee benefits in there, the average state worker is making 23% more than the private sector.
Does your employer give you free insurance coverage for family members or a bonus for not calling in sick? Learn about the state government perks you pay for. Tonight we've been asking whether your tax dollars are really being put to good use in Olympia. Now, no one is disputing there are many necessary services provided by our state government. But should our government continue to grow while our big employers, such as Boeing, are cutting back? Watch Susanna Frame's story, and then you decide.
And I am here to say that whatever it takes from this national union, whatever it takes, that national union will stand with you, beside you, with money, marbles, and chalk to win this battle in Washington State.
March 19th, state workers react to Governor Lowry's proposal to cut state workers and reform civil service.
Why, he wants to balance this budget on our backs.
State workers protest loudly, but should they complain? During the recession, corporations in the state laid off thousands, but the number of state workers actually increased. 8,000 new state workers during the last 3 years, 23,000 in the last 10 years. Nearly 90,000 state employees total, the single biggest expense for taxpayers.
Each 1,000 state employees costs about $100 million every 2 years.
According to one national study, state workers in Washington state make more than those working in the private sector. The average state salary with benefits is more than $42,000 a year. The American Legislative Council estimates the state overcompensates workers by more than $1 billion a year. Government watchdog Bob Williams.
The average state worker is being paid 11.9% higher than the private sector. But if you put employee benefits in there, the average state worker is making 23% more than the private sector.
Report received.
Message from the House, March 31st, 1990.
Even when lawmakers vote to freeze pay increases for state employees, more than half of them end up with bigger paychecks anyway. Many state employees get what are called automatic step increases, a raise just for being there.
I don't get automatic pay increases. No one in the private sector, very few companies. I don't know of any companies that have automatic pay increases.
Elaine Davis is a private consultant studying employee benefits. She found state benefits are extremely generous. State workers pay nothing to insure themselves or their family members. Compare that to the typical corporation. Aldus Software is headquartered in Seattle. Like many companies, Aldus pays the premiums for their employees' health coverage. But the employees must pay to cover their family members. Every month, Laura Malone pays for her husband and 7-year-old son.
It was $150 extra a month when I first began, and now it's $170.
Elaine Davis estimates the state could save millions by having employees pay $35 a week toward their premiums.
If we didn't cover the dependent and spouses, if we said that the employees have to pay those premiums out of their paycheck, how much would we save? My calculations show that it's somewhere between $700 and $800 million a year.
Another benefit for state employees is a reward for simply not calling in sick. The state spends $6 million a year in bonuses for workers who do not use their sick leave. Few private businesses offer that benefit.
And what it's allowed people to do is when they get near retirement to save, cash it out, and then inflate their final year's salary and thereby get a higher pension.
In the case of the University of Washington, we have over 1,500 professional staff in 100 different categories of employees.
Some state jobs may surprise you. All the people sitting on this panel are government liaisons, but critics complain they are merely taxpayer-funded lobbyists. Steve Excel was Governor Spellman's chief of staff.
There is something strange when taxpayers find out that government agencies or institutions are lobbying the legislature for more money.
Most large state agencies and institutions employ lobbyists at a huge cost to taxpayers. Even Senator Dan McDonald was startled by the salaries.
Yikes. God. Whoa. They vary from a low of about $41,000 per year to a high of over $80,000 a year.
Just look at the salaries of the government liaisons at this legislative hearing. Bob Eady, lobbyist for the University of Washington, makes $83,000 a year. Larry Gander from Washington State University, $52,000. Central Washington University's lobbyist, Mary Marcy, earns more than $44,000 a year, and Jennifer Jake of Evergreen State, nearly $42,000. All full-time positions to lobby a part-time legislature. Bob Eady says his job is necessary.
The University of Washington is one of the most important institutions in this state and this region, and it deserves good representation on important matters here. And in fact, the legislature demands that we be here to give them our views.
Vicki Cahill is at the other end of the salary spectrum. She's been cleaning Olympia office buildings for 17 years. She makes $10.20 an hour, the top salary for a custodian. But general administration charges the agencies she cleans as much as $25 an hour for services.
There's no reason to charge that much money. You know, $25 an hour to have some windows washed. You know, that's bizarre.
The union that represents state workers says the $25 an hour cleaning charge pays for a bloated bureaucracy. Gary Moore of the Federation of State Employees.
General administration has increased the number of supervisors and administrators. Those positions need to be eliminated, and the price to the agencies then for the custodial services can be greatly reduced.
During the economic boom of the 80s, tax revenues poured into Olympia. Few here gave much thought to cutting down on the number of state workers or streamlining state government. Look what the legislature did 2 years ago when they appropriated millions toward what many call pork barrel projects.
Listen to the story I have come to tell. Goodbye, Kai.
Lawmakers voted to spend $2 million to build a theater to house these giant puppets.
Oh boy, I sure am learning a lot today.
The Tears of Joy Theater will be built in Vancouver, former House Speaker Joe King's hometown. Some lawmakers now want the project stopped.
Have you asked people if they would rather have the cost of a new elementary school paid for or a puppet theater? I think I'd know probably what the public would choose.
In Walla Walla, $55,000 of state tax money was spent for a statue of missionary Marcus Whitman. Town leaders say they couldn't have raised the money privately to build the statue.
I'm just not sure that the community could have afforded, or there could have been enough desire from the community standpoint to afford this in total by itself.
The residents of Walla Walla were surprised to learn tax dollars paid for the statue.
Oh, well, I don't like the idea the taxpayers paying for it. I think it should have been by contributions probably around town.
Former Senate Majority Leader Jeanette Hayner played a key role in getting state money appropriated for the statue. Walla Walla is in her district.
And we thank Jeanette and the legislators who made this possible.
talking about spread by search.
Facing tax increases and an angry public, this year's legislature has started to cut the fat. But critics say when the legislature leaves, the bureaucracy will keep wasting state money.
There's no traffic cop. There's no one who's a watchdog over state spending right now, which is unfortunate.
Susanna, what is it going to take to bring about some accountability in Olympia?
Well, Jean, the fear is that once lawmakers go home, agencies will go back to their old spending ways. Waste Watchers say those agencies need to spell out in written, itemized reports just how they're spending taxpayer dollars.
All right, Susanna, thank you. So what about you? Do you know of some wasteful spending in state government? We've set up a government waste hotline for you to call. It's right here at King 5. The number is 448-3130, and leave your confidential message. Again, that's 448-3130.